Hello and welcome to this video. In this video we're going to look at what is your responsibility as a business owner when it comes to dates and HMRC. Hello, my name is Aaron Patrick. I'm a chartered accountant, certified UK QuickBooks trainer and also that QuickBooks chap. Here at Boffix we know that how difficult and daunting it can be when you first set out business to understand what your requirements are to get those essential filings in on time. And when it comes to filings, you're going to have a variety of ones to maybe have to consider, and depending on what type of business structure you have, you may find that there's going to be multiple points throughout the year that you get some form of return sent off to HMRC. Now, to break this down, what we're going to do is we're going to take it into various different types of businesses and then also various different types of VAT schemes. And we're going to concentrate on this video on the more common ones, so the ones that you as a brand new business may or may not have to deal with. The first one, keep it really straightforward, is if you are a self-employed individual. So you've got your own little business and you are recording to HMRC that you are taking in business profits and you're going to record them on an annual basis. You'll know if this is you because you don't have a company set up on Companies House and you've basically told HMRC that you are a business. This is commonly referred to as a self-assessment, and the whole idea of self-assessment is you're going to tell HMRC what profits you've earned in a particular tax year. Now, from a dates point of view, the most important date for you to remember is the 31st of January, because that's going to be when your next return is going to be due. 31st of January represents the date that the return is due from the previous tax year. Now, you get to dictate when your tax year starts and ends as a sole trader, but what we would recommend at Boffix is keeping it nice and straightforward and keeping it in line with the current tax years. If you keep it in line with current tax years, it makes it really simple for you. So basically, if you start a business and then end in the next tax year, so let's say you start the business today and you're looking to end on the 31st of March, then your next requirement is that as soon as that 31st of March comes and goes, so in your case, it will be the next 31st of March in 2021. As soon as that 31st of March comes and goes, at that point, you then have to start considering filing a self-assessment tax return based on those periods of profits that you've just made. So effectively, your next date that you have to worry about is the 31st of January 2022, because that's going to be when you need to record that first tax return. Now, it gets more complicated than that depending on what date you've chosen as your year end, but from a simplistic point of view, basically if you start today, then you have to make sure you filed in the next 31st of January after the one that's coming up. So that's self-assessment. Really straightforward, and here at Boffix we can make sure you get the right information on there. And also we're going to make sure there's videos on this channel that's going to give you confidence to make sure you're putting the right information into those returns. But what about if you decided to go as a limited company? Well, as a limited company and as a director, you will still have a requirement to do that self-assessment. Still, same requirement will be in place, although it'll be a very different amount of information put on the return. You'll be putting on your salary and your dividends. Again, we'll go into more detail about that in a future video. But you'll also have other deadlines that you need to comply to as a limited company. First of those deadlines is going to be what's called a confirmation statement. And basically, because your company is on Companies House and publicly available, confirmation statement is basically you agreeing that the information shown on Companies House agrees. So you'll have each and every year, they'll send you a reminder. It's normally as soon as that first year is finished, you'll get a reminder saying, can you please confirm that everything on Companies House is correct? So that's your first deadline. Your second deadline to worry about is that as a company on Companies House, and if you go and find your companies on Companies House as well, it will say next set of accounts due. And that's going to be your due date for submitting accounts to Companies House. You have 9 months after that period to complete your statutory set of abbreviated accounts. Now again, it gets a bit more complicated based on your year end, so do kind of keep that in mind. But the best place to look at is Companies House themselves. They're going to say straight away on the website exactly the date that your company is due to file its set of accounts. A limited company also has a requirement to file with HMRC what's called a CT600, so a company tax return, and that company tax return also has to include a set of accounts. Thankfully, they're the same pretty much set of accounts you'll be filing to Companies House, so you can use the same periods and everything that goes with it. The date for that being filed randomly is 12 months after the year end. But you have to have paid your taxes due 9 months and a day after a year end. So what makes most sense is to file your CT600 with your abbreviated account at the same time. That way everything's getting filed in within the time limits, and then you can make your payment for that tax during that period as well. So to recap, as a limited company, you have 3 dates you need to keep an eye on. First one's going to be that confirmation statement. Second one is going to be the fact that you need to get some accounts over to Companies House. And the third one is you need what's called a CT600 to be filed with HMRC. And both of them, we would recommend 9 months, but in reality, you've got 12 months to file that CT600. Don't forget, if you are a limited company, you still have to, or you're most likely going to have to file what's called a self-assessment tax return as well. And don't forget, that's due 31st of January each and every year. Okay, so that's a look at the standard requirements and ones that if you're either a sole trader or a limited company, you will have to do no matter what. But what about some of those requirements where you get a bit of a choice and it depends on if you're going to be involved in the scheme or not? Again, to keep this video nice and simple, we're just going to concentrate on the schemes that are most readily available to small businesses and ones that actually get used on a regular basis. The first one to consider is PAYE, so that's your payroll. Now, why is payroll important and why is payroll something we should consider? Well, that's your ability to go and pay an employee, or maybe pay yourself if you're a limited company. Now, the deadlines and requirements for this are really straightforward, and actually they've evolved over time and make it so that, quite simply put, if you make a payment to someone, then your requirement is to send that information to HMRC in what they call RTI, which stands for real-time information. So basically, from a payment point of view, if you're going to pay someone using the PAYE scheme, your deadline is that you need to tell them before you make the payment or when you make the payment to your employees. Best thing to do with this is use software. QuickBooks has a fantastic payroll solution that we would recommend at Boffix, or obviously outsource your payroll to Boffix themselves, and we make sure that you become RTI compliant. Now, being RTI compliant just effectively means that you're filing your PAYE returns to HMRC on a regular basis and making sure you're compliant from there. You may have requirements to make a payment to for your PAYE. So if you've taken taxes off an employee at any point in time, you then collect those taxes over a month period. So we're using the 6th of a particular month to the 5th of a particular month. Once that period's over and you've made your RTI submissions, when you make that RTI submission, you're telling HMRC how much you've deducted. You're then due to make a payment to HMRC regarding PAYE, and that due date is the 22nd of each month. So PAYE, that's going to be the one where if you're making payments to employees, you need to make sure that your reporting requirement is in real time, hence the phrase RTI, real-time information. And then you need to make sure you've made your payment, if there's anything due to HMRC regarding PAYE, by the 22nd of the following month. And there's one more tax you may have to be involved in, and that's VAT. VAT is something that as a small business, you may not have to be registered in. If your turnover is above £85,000, then you are required to be VAT registered, subject to if you're selling VAT supplies. Or as a smaller business with the turnover not quite 85, you have an opportunity to voluntarily become VAT registered. Now, VAT is a complex area, one we're going to do a lot of content on this channel about, so make sure to like and subscribe to make sure you understand exactly how VAT works and how to account for it properly. But when it comes to deadlines, it's really straightforward. Basically, as a VAT registered business, you will have a requirement to file a VAT return. When you become VAT registered, you get to decide at what period you're going to file VAT returns, so you can either do monthly, quarterly, or annually. Most clients, though, they would opt for quarterly, and no matter what frequency you file your VAT return, the due date for the VAT return and the payment is always going to be at the end of the period that you've got to file to. You get a month and then 7 days after that. So that's 1 month after the date plus 7 days. So the 7th of the month following. Now, to compile a VAT return, you will need to use software. Again, Boffix here, we can do that for you, or you can use a solution like QuickBooks. But the key thing to remember is when is it due? And it's always due 1 month plus 7 days after a particular period. And there we have it, a look at all the different taxes that could be available to you as a small business. It is a complex area, and it is one where us at Boffix, we recommend that you do have at least someone looking after your back And that's where Boffix can come into play. So for a small subscription, you can make sure that Boffix is looking after all of your tax requirements and making sure you don't miss any of those deadlines. But if you are going to do it yourself, then please, please, please just get some control element in place. Set yourself some targets to make sure you're filing before these deadlines. One of the things we find the most in terms of problems for clients is if you leave it until the last moment, sometimes you can have unforeseen issues and unforeseen errors. That means that you're not going to be able to get that information submitted to HMRC. And what you really need to do is make sure that you have all that sort of stuff done first, so that if there is any issues regarding filing, you've still got plenty of time to make that deadline. Also, these deadlines, not just about you having to file the information over to HMRC, but normally they also require you to make payment for the taxes due as well. And as a small business, please don't bury your head in the sand. Please consider the opportunity at this point to be utilizing all of the tools around you to be able to understand what your tax bill is going to be before it's due. That way it gives you time to save for it, that way it gives you time to prepare for it, that way it doesn't become an issue. So I would urge you all just to make sure that you have in your opportunity to make sure that you've got an idea of what that tax bill is going to be before it's due, so that you can make sure you can pay that on time. If you are having issues paying for it, then one of the things I would also recommend is talking to HMRC from day one. One thing they are really good at is being accommodating to clients and businesses who talk to them from the offset. If you leave it until the day it's due, you're going to get less opportunity to be able to have some sort of solution, some sort of way in which you can manage those payments to HMRC. But if you talk to them nice and early about it, your chances of them coming to some sort of agreement that's going to work for both you and for HMRC is going to be increased. And that's it. Here's a list of all the dates that I think are going to be useful. But as a small business, you've got lots and lots and lots of things to think about. Don't make statutory accounts be one of them and statutory deadlines be one of them. Consider using Boffix as a way to make your life easier so you can concentrate on being the best business you possibly can. My name's Aaron Patrick. I've been your host for today's video. And on the next couple of videos, we are going to have a proper look at how these different taxes can affect your business. Stay tuned to this channel. This is where you're going to get the most advice about making sure your business is paying the right taxes and making sure that you're saving the most amount of money. And with that, it's time to say goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.
I told him I can be a fighter if you want. I'll be there to catch you if you fall. I can make it brighter when it's dark, I told him I would do it all for you, and I know you do it for me too. I can be a fighter if you want, if you want. I can be a fighter, I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter if you want. Oh, the way that I feel, yeah, I know that it's real, cause I can get him out of my head. I don't care what we do, everything's feeling new. Even if we stay in bed, my heart is saying yeah, 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 yeah. You know I want him, nah, 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 nah. My heart is saying yeah, 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 yeah.